50 years ago that a skinny 14-year-old kid, like those guys right up back there, stepped onto this field with one goal in mind, and that was to make his JV high school baseball team. And he came to tryouts with nothing more than a pair of jeans, a white t-shirt, a glove, and a $4 wood bat from Sears. But he carried in his heart a lot of hope and a lot of determination that the lessons he had learned from his dad, who had taught him the game, and from those great mentors down in the Kennedy Youth Program, would be enough to somehow get the job done. What he didn't know, that he was attempting to do something that greats like Victor Albury, Boog Powell, the Lastras brothers, Robert Cuban Santana, Steve Flub Thompson, and possibly the greatest player that this kid at 14 years old had ever seen, Randy Sterling, play on this field, had done before him. And that was to become a part of one of the most storied baseball programs around. Well, as luck would have it, that kid didn't make JV that year. He made varsity, and he went on to start for the next 4 years. And he did okay. There was nothing awe-inspiring about his career, nothing to write home about. But in his freshman year, he played well enough to earn that coveted KW letter, and more importantly to him, that beautiful crimson and gray jacket that he wore so proudly anytime the temperature dropped below 70 degrees. And then in his sophomore and junior years, he played well enough to earn all conference, all regional recognition. And then in his senior year, at the end of the year, he was named MVP and was named first team All-State by the Florida Sports Writers Association and the coaches that he played against. But let's set the accolades aside, because we all know that as soon as they're earned, they're forgotten. But the one thing that that kid did not forget was the memory of losing not one, but 2 state championships here for his beloved Key West Conks. One in the finals of his sophomore year in 1972, and one in the semifinals of 1974. And although he's acquired 5 state championships, 3 as a player, 2 as a coach, if you ask him, those 2 still haunt him to this day. And of course, the kid is me. And I stand here tonight before you with so much emotion because, like Todd said, I have so many great memories and I've learned so many lessons on this very field. But I'm also surrounded by some of the greatest players that have ever played here. And to have my name mentioned in the same conversation with them is an honor all to itself. And I clearly remember that day in 1971 when Coach T gave me my uniform, and I walked from the high school to my parents' home there on Flagler, as Brooks mentioned, and I walked into the kitchen, and my mom said to me, "Papa, what is that?" And I said, "Mom, it's my uniform. I made varsity, and we traveled to Coral Gables this Friday to play our first game." Well, today, that's commonplace. These kids are so big and strong and so talented that freshmen routinely make their varsity rosters. But back then, even bigger than the fact that I had made varsity as a freshman was the fact that a kid from a tight-knit Spanish family was going to Miami for the very first time by himself. And I could hear my mom now, "Jose, he's got to go to Miami. You know, that's a dangerous place. Chicky, you'll be all right." But it's true. Today, that's commonplace. These kids play travel ball. They go to perfect game showcases and whatnot. But back then, it was a big deal. And I also have some great memories of playing against power high schools from Miami. Schools like Miami High, Carl Park, Killian, curling in Columbus, to name a few. But the memory that resonates the most with me is of a 2-game Friday night, Saturday night series against our arch rivals at that time, Miami Beach High. Now, this was a talent-laden program, and it was coached by legendary coach Skip Bertman, who went on to coach at the University of Miami, and then on to LSU, where he won a number of national titles. But we were constantly vying for the #1 spot with Miami High in the Greater Miami Athletic Conference that Todd mentioned. And this 2-game series here was huge. And in the first game on Friday night, I ran into a fastball and hit it deep into that left center field gap for a triple. And I slid headfirst into third base, and the crowd, as always, was going nuts. And as I dusted myself off, Coach T was whispering something in my ear. And over his right shoulder, I picked up the vision of one fan in particular. And he was standing right there in the corner of those third base bleachers, both hands raised in the air, fists raised in the air, and this huge smile that was just awe-striking. And that fan was Terry Daughtry. And that memory has stayed with me for all that time. I'm 66 years old now. I was probably 16 then. What it tells me is that the elation of the crowd and Terry's joy meant more to me than the significance of the triple that I had just hit. And Terry and I went on to become dear friends, and I am forever grateful for that lasting memory. In the second game, we're winning 2-1. Beach has a runner on second base, and they get a base hit up the middle. And our center fielder, Steve Greenwood, comes up throwing and throws an absolute seed to the plate to burn the runner. I can't remember if it was Donald Brown or Ralphie who made the tag and preserved the win, and I believe clinched the #1 spot in the Greater Miami Athletic Conference and put us in a great seed for the upcoming tournament. Now, on a comical note, I remember going to Miami to play an overnight game, and we pulled up to the illustrious Patricia Hotel. Now, I say that jokingly and with a lot of condescent in my voice, because this is not like pulling up to the DoubleTree where you're greeted by Michael Knowles and his great staff and getting cookies and water. No. Just to give you an example of our accommodations, as our coaches are getting the keys from the front desk, we are literally stepping over and around the winos sleeping off their drunks in the lobby from the night before. You can't make this crap up. But even funnier than that, a few minutes later, we get up to our room, and Coach Ralph was one of my roommates that weekend. We open the door, he takes one look at the toilet and says, "Oh, hell no, I'm not putting my behind on that toilet. If I've got to go, I'm opening up the window and I'm going out the window." Well, thankfully, that didn't happen because across Biscayne Boulevard, there were some pretty nice hotels. Back then, you didn't need a key to get in, and we could go there and use the restrooms at will. And those are just two stories, because I'm going to try to stay within my allotted time. But you can't have great stories without great teammates. And I played alongside of some incredible baseball players. I played alongside famed Key West attorney Bill Spotswood, probably known more for his basketball prowess, a silky smooth jump shot for those great teams of the 60s and 70s, but Bill, one hell of a baseball player as well. I played behind the legendary southpaw Brooks Carey, masterful craftsman who could command the inside and outside part of the plate and dominate hitters. I played alongside the aforementioned great catcher, versatile first baseman, Ralph Henriquez, who had a powerful arm and could hit for power. Not only here, but he was my teammate on a 1969 state championship team in Little League and one in the defunct Prep League in 1973. Also on those two teams, phenomenal players in their own right, Louis and Richie Pazzo. Louis, our right fielder, Richie, our shortstop, who went on to star at the University of Miami. But you can't have great teams without a great support system. And how blessed was I to have the following people. The man who this field is named after, Mr. Rex Weech, probably and undoubtedly the greatest groundskeeper in the state of Florida, maybe in the United States. It didn't matter if it was for a practice, inter-squad game, practice game against Mary Immaculate, as Todd alluded to. His field was in pristine condition when we stepped on it. Back then, it was Bermuda grass and clay. And I took minimum of 100 ground balls a night in practice, and he made sure that the surface was flawless. Glenn Archer Jr., not only our principal, but our PA announcer, who conned us and gave us so many nicknames and coined mine of Carew after the legendary Hall of Famer, Rod Carew, second baseman for the Minnesota Twins. And if you knew Mr. Archer, this was one of the most honorable men around. And for him to see me in that light was an honor all to itself. Todd, your dad, the legendary Gail Swifty Swapper, who would broadcast our away games, especially the tournament ones and the state championship ones. And he would electrify the airwaves over WKIZ with his classic call of mercy anytime a conch made a stellar play on defense or came up with a big key hit, kind of like Rick Lopez's "Hey, hey," that I get to hear in my home in Atlanta when I am listening to the great conchs of today. Back then, we had bad girls, and we had three of the best around. These girls did so much more than pick up bats. Maria Aradavola, Gina Soldano Smith, and Stephanie Thompson Monsignor. These girls became the sisters that I wish I had and never did. And then, of course, how much more support can a baseball player who has played out here ask than to play in front of the greatest band in the world? You guys are undoubtedly the very best. And I have said it to many people on many occasions who have asked me, Vic, what's it like to play a game of baseball in Key West? And I tell them, if you have not lived it, you won't understand it. It is unique in every sense of the word. So as I wind this down, I have to say thank you to a couple of people. To Coach Otto Tafinjan, to Coach Pedro Fraga, who took a chance on that skinny 14-year-old kid who came out here with just a dream and gave him the opportunity of a lifetime to make it a reality. To my beloved mom and dad. My dad, as I mentioned earlier, taught me the game, but more importantly, reminded me every day, keeping me grounded when he said, Vic, no matter how good they say you are, or how good you think you are, there is always somebody better. My beloved mom, who like all baseball moms, was always there for support, who healed my physical wounds and the emotional ones that come when we all struggle in the game of baseball, and who had my favorite pregame meal of white rice, black beans and Palomilla steak ready for me at 3 o'clock every time we had a home game. And I can't speak of a meal without thanking the late, great Papa Tony Davila, who, when we went away to play